The first thing my husband said when he came home was not, "How are you feeling?" It was, "Sophie cried because of what you did." I was sitting upright in bed with a fever, my back pressed against the headboard because my stomach hurt too much to lie flat. Ethan stood in the doorway in his navy suit, his tie loosened, one hand still wrapped around his phone. He did not come closer. He did not notice the glass of water I had been too nauseated to finish or the untouched bowl of soup on the nightstand. All he saw was the woman I had embarrassed by declining her credit card. "A single card," he said, as if the words themselves proved how unreasonable I was. "You froze it in the middle of a store." Do you know how humiliating that was for her? I looked at him for a long moment. "The card was charged $23,840 today," I said. "In 4 months, she spent more than $188,000. That isn't the point." "No," I said quietly. "Apparently, the point is that she cried." The day had started with a bank notification at 3:47 in the afternoon. I had left work early because I was running a fever. My phone buzzed beneath my pillow, and when I pulled it out, I saw a purchase alert from a luxury boutique on Madison Avenue. $23,840. I read the amount twice. Not because I could not afford it. Because I had been in bed all day, and I had not bought anything on Madison Avenue. I opened the account history. $520 for a custom dessert order the day before. $115 at a floral studio. $3,200 at a medical spa. Pilates, private physical therapy, fine dining, a jewelry deposit, skin treatments, and a personal shopping service. All of it had been charged to the same authorized user card. I sent screenshots to Mia Chin, a former analyst from my risk management team who now ran a financial consulting firm. She helped organize my private investment records, household expenses, and tax documents. 10 minutes later, she called. "The cardholder is Sophie Lane," she said. "She was added 4 months ago through Ethan's account manager access." I closed my eyes. After we married, I had given Ethan limited administrative authority over one of my premium credit accounts. It was meant to simplify household expenses and business entertaining. He could not touch my investments or savings, but he could manage the credit lines I had opened for family use and add authorized users. I had trusted him with that authority. He had used it to add his college girlfriend. "The application lists her as household support," Mia continued. "The bank did not separately notify you because you had opted into administrator-managed authorized users. So it was not a banking error. It was not fraud by a stranger. It was trust redirected." "Has Ethan reimbursed the account?" I asked. "No. Sophie's card has accumulated $188,426 in charges. That does not include her apartment or the company car." My stomach tightened. "Freeze her card." Mia paused. Now. Revoke Ethan's administrator access and suspend every card attached to him. He has an investor dinner tonight. Then he can use Northstar's corporate card. Or his own money." 40 minutes later, Sophie called me. Her voice was soft and tremulous, carefully balanced between apology and injury. "Claire, it's Sophie. My card was declined at the boutique. Ethan just told me the account belongs to you. I truly didn't know. If I had known, I never would have. You know now." There was a beat of silence. "Have I caused trouble?" "No. The card is closed. There won't be any more trouble. Ethan said it was a household account. He said you wouldn't mind." "He decided that on my behalf," I said. "I'm telling you directly that I do mind." She inhaled sharply. "If you don't want me in New York, I can leave. I don't want you thinking I'm the kind of woman who destroys someone else's marriage. I'm discussing money, not where you live. But you're an adult, Sophie. If you use a card that is not yours, you should know who pays the bill. As for what kind of woman you are, I don't need to define that for you." I ended the call. An hour later, Ethan came home and told me she had cried. He stood in the bedroom doorway, looking offended on her behalf. "She just got out of a terrible marriage," he said. "She came back to New York with nothing. I was helping her get settled. That amount of money means nothing to you. If it means nothing, pay it yourself. You know all my cash is tied up in the company. That was your choice." His face hardened. "Do married people really have to keep score like this?" The question was so absurd that, despite the fever, I suddenly felt clear-headed. Last month, Northstar laid off 27 employees. I advanced $480,000 of their severance. Your next funding round has not closed, and I've been carrying vendor bills and cloud service payments through documented loans. I agreed to support your company because the money had a defined business purpose and a repayment record. I paused. An apartment, a driver, jewelry, and cosmetic treatments for your ex-girlfriend were not part of that agreement. Ethan's jaw tightened. You used to be more generous. I used to believe my generosity was respected. He stared at me, then turned and left. The bedroom door remained half open, spilling a thin line of hallway light across the floor. No one came back to close it. That night, I did not sleep much. By morning, I had made 3 calls. The first was to Mia. The second was to my bank. The third was to Olivia Grant, the attorney who had drafted our prenuptial agreement. I was not angry anymore. I was auditing the risk. And for the first time in 3 years, the risk had Ethan's name on it. Sophie Lane had returned to New York 4 months earlier. Ethan told me over dinner that she had divorced a man in London and was coming home with very little money. He said she had no apartment, no stable work, and no support system. He spoke with the grave compassion of someone proposing a temporary act of kindness. I want to help her get settled, he said. Just for a few months. I had been reviewing a distress fund liquidation at the time. My days started before sunrise and ended after most of Manhattan had gone dark. I barely looked up from the spreadsheet on my tablet. Fine, I said. She's fragile right now. I understand. She may need a little more help than most people. All right. That was the problem with trust. Sometimes the other person heard only the permission and ignored the limit. Ethan leased Sophie a high-rise apartment in Midtown for 18 months. He arranged a car service, housekeeping, private fitness sessions, a medical spa account, and a relocation consultant. Then he added her to my premium credit line under a label vague enough to avoid attention. He did not tell me any of that. When we married, Ethan's company, Northstar AI, was moving from a promising startup into serious venture territory. He had founded it before we met, so under our prenup, his shares remained his separate property. My investment accounts, real estate, and family trust income remained mine. Anything jointly acquired would be divided according to actual contribution. At the time, Ethan had laughed after signing. This proves I'm not marrying you for your money. I had laughed too. For 3 years, I paid nearly every household expense. The mortgage, property taxes, insurance, the housekeeper, vacations, his mother's luxury assisted living community. Ethan kept most of his salary and liquid assets inside Northstar because, as he liked to say, cash belongs where it can grow. I understood that logic. I worked in risk and governance. I understood leverage, growth, and temporary liquidity gaps better than most founders. So when Northstar needed short-term funding, I provided it, but never casually. Every major transfer had a promissory note, an email acknowledgement, a board record, or a finance department confirmation. I did not demand repayment during difficult quarters because I believed Ethan and I were building toward the same future. What I had not understood was that he viewed my support as permanent infrastructure. The morning after I froze the cards, Mia sent me a complete report. Sophie's personal charges totaled $188,426. Her apartment lease, deposits, car service, and company-paid benefits added another $214,000. Ethan's own authorized cards had accumulated more than $600,000 in the previous year. Some was legitimate business entertaining. Much of it had been labeled household expense or temporary reimbursement without any reimbursement ever arriving. I saved every statement in a folder titled Marital Financial Records. Then I canceled the automatic payment for Margaret Cole's assisted living community. I did not cancel her residency. I did not stop her medical care. I simply removed my personal account as the default payer for the next quarter. I also ended the automatic transfer for the housekeeper's salary, revoked the card kept by Northstar's administrative office, and closed every remaining authorized user line under Ethan's name. 3 minutes later, he called. I did not answer. A text followed. Why are my cards not working? I looked at the message and felt something inside me settle. Not your cards, I thought. Mine. His second call came while I was getting dressed for work. His third came as I stepped into the elevator. I answered. Claire, did you shut down my cards? His voice was low. I could hear restaurant noise behind him. I closed my authorized user cards. I'm with investors. Use Northstar's corporate account. Finance says the monthly limit is already exhausted. Then use your personal card. You know I don't keep much cash outside the company. I know. What exactly are you trying to do? From today forward, your personal spending, Northstar's business expenses, your mother's living costs, and Sophie's lifestyle are your responsibility. Claire. His voice dropped. This is not how marriage works. No, I said. Marriage is not one spouse using the other spouse's money to maintain an ex-girlfriend. I am not maintaining her. I am helping her transition. An 18-month lease is not a transition. He went silent. The driver contract is for a year. So is housekeeping. Her wellness and cosmetic accounts were prepaid. Which part of that is temporary? You are making this ugly. No. I am making it visible. Someone spoke to him in the background, and he said we would discuss it at home. He did not come home that night. At 1:08 a.m., Sophie posted an Instagram story showing 2 glasses of red wine on a candlelit table. The caption read, "Thank you for always being here." At the edge of the image was the cuff of a pale blue shirt I had ordered for Ethan the month before. I took a screenshot and sent it to Olivia. Not because I needed to prove an affair. By then, whether they had slept together was almost beside the point. I needed to document that after I had clearly withdrawn consent, Ethan continued directing his time, money, and loyalty toward another woman. The next morning, my doorbell rang at 7. Margaret Cole was standing outside with the community billing manager behind her. She walked in before I invited her. What did you do to my account? She demanded. I removed my payment authorization. They told me next quarter has not been paid. Do you know how humiliating that is? The billing manager tried to explain that no one was being asked to leave and that it was simply an automated notice. Margaret dismissed her with an irritated wave. When the door closed, she turned back to me. Ethan's company is at a critical stage. His money is tied up. You have more than enough. Would it really hurt you to help? I have helped for 3 years. You're his wife. And he is your son. Her expression sharpened. This is because of Sophie. This is because your expenses are Ethan's responsibility. Sophie has been through hell. She and Ethan suffered together when they were young. He has the means now to give her some comfort. With my money? Margaret looked at me as if I were being deliberately difficult. You have always had more than she has. Why can't you be gracious? That sentence explained our entire marriage. Ethan believed my money should support his ambition because I was his wife. Margaret believed my money should fund her lifestyle because I was her daughter-in-law. Sophie believed Ethan's success entitled her to compensation for an old heartbreak. No one had asked whether I agreed. I'm done being gracious at my own expense, I said. Margaret stared at me. The next quarterly payment is $96,000. Ethan can pay it by the end of the month. If you want to continue using the housekeeper and driver, you can contract with them directly. You're using money to control us. No. I'm refusing to be controlled through money. I placed a 3-year household expense summary on the table. Her community fees, medical upgrades, travel, private services, household payroll, mortgage payments, and property costs filled several pages. Margaret scanned the total and went pale. Ethan will repay you eventually. He has not repaid the first dollar Sophie spent. He is busy building a company. Then he should be too busy to finance a second household. She stood abruptly. Marriage should not feel like an audit, Claire. Ethan needs a supportive wife, not someone who threatens his company every time she gets upset. I gathered the papers. When you needed money, I was family. Now that I'm asking where it went, I'm a threat. She left furious. As soon as the door closed, I called Olivia. I want to separate my assets, I said. There was a short silence. And the marriage, she asked. I want a divorce. The words did not break me. They felt like closing an exposure that should have been reviewed long ago. Olivia's office overlooked the East River. She had represented my father for years and had drafted our prenup with the patience of someone who assumed it would never be needed. She reviewed Mia's records without interrupting. Northstar owed me $2.6 million in documented short-term loans. Another $740,000 in payroll, severance, cloud service fees, and vendor payments had been acknowledged by Northstar's finance department as related party debt. A $4 million commercial credit facility was secured by a personal guarantee tied to a building I owned before the marriage. Olivia removed her glasses. What outcome do you want? I want the guarantee terminated at expiration. I want no new advances. I want a formal repayment plan for existing debt. That may disrupt their funding round. I know. Ethan will say you are trying to destroy the company. I am not withdrawing money already invested. I am not demanding immediate liquidation. I am refusing to provide new money and refusing to keep my property at risk. Olivia studied me for a moment, then nodded. That is a defensible position. That afternoon, she sent notices to Ethan and Northstar's board. All personal bridge funding would stop immediately. The company had 60 days to propose repayment of the documented loans. My guarantee would not be renewed after 45 days. No one was authorized to use my accounts, credit, or assets on the assumption that marital status constituted consent. Ethan arrived at my office less than 15 minutes later. My firm occupied 2 floors of a glass tower in Midtown. Northstar's headquarters was only a few blocks away. He must have run. There was sweat at his temples. What did you send to my board? He demanded. A legal notice. I know what it is. Why would you send it 2 weeks before final diligence? Because the investors should understand Northstar's actual debt and guarantee structure. You have never demanded repayment before. The oldest loan matured 8 months ago. And you never cared. I cared. I trusted you. We are married. We are supposed to be on the same side. We stopped being on the same side when you used my financial support to build a life for Sophie. He planted both hands on my desk. You are letting jealousy jeopardize hundreds of jobs. If a company valued in the hundreds of millions cannot survive without the founder's wife providing unlimited personal credit, the problem is not her jealousy. His eyes flashed. You don't understand what it takes to build a company. I almost laughed. For 3 years, every time Northstar needed money, I understood entrepreneurship. The moment I asked to see the real numbers, I suddenly know nothing. He straightened. What do you want from me? My assets back. My guarantees ended. My loans recognized. My name removed from your operating model. We're husband and wife. Not for much longer. His expression changed. You're filing for divorce? Olivia will contact your attorney. Because of Sophie? No. I slid the loan schedule across the desk. Because I realized you treated my contribution as a default setting. You treated my boundaries like terms you could revise without asking. Sophie was simply the evidence. I have never touched her. You keep saying that as if physical contact is the only form of betrayal. It matters. Then cancel her apartment, her driver, her company benefits, and every account you created for her. Today. He said nothing. I nodded once. That matters too. After he left, I asked building security to change my visitor access to appointment only. When I returned home that night, 3 people were waiting in the living room. Ethan, Margaret, Sophie. A pot of tea sat on the coffee table, as if they were hosting an intervention in the house I had largely paid for. Sophie wore cream silk and no visible jewelry. Her eyes were pink. She rose when I entered. Claire, I'm sorry. This is all because of me. Don't perform guilt. Say what you came to say. She swallowed. I can move out. I can find work. I'll repay what I spent little by little. Ethan was only helping because I had nowhere to go. Please don't end your marriage over me. How much can you repay each month? I asked. The question startled her. Once I find a job. Your apartment is $24,000 a month. The driver and housekeeping are another $9,000. Your personal spending averaged more than $40,000. At $2,000 a month, you would need nearly 8 years to repay the card charges alone. Margaret snapped. She said she'll pay you back. What more do you want? A written acknowledgement. I removed a document from my bag and placed it on the table. The credit charges total $188,426. The lease and service contracts were signed by Ethan, so I am not asking Sophie to assume those. But if she means what she says, she can sign this repayment acknowledgement. Sophie turned to Ethan. He spoke without looking at the document. Don't sign it. The charges are mine. Fine, I said. Then you sign. He did not move. Margaret slapped her palm against the table. Does everything have to become a legal document with you? When people honor their word, no. When they spend my money and deny responsibility, yes. Sophie's eyes filled. I never wanted to come between you. You didn't have to want it, I said. You lived in an apartment I funded, used a card attached to my name, and accepted a driver paid through a company I kept solvent. Then you posted about feeling unwelcome. You didn't need to destroy anything personally. Ethan did it for you. That post wasn't about you. I didn't say it was. Tears slid down her cheeks. Ethan immediately handed her a tissue. The gesture was small. It was also the final answer. I went upstairs and brought down 2 packed suitcases. Ethan followed me into the bedroom. Where are you going? To my apartment. This is your home. I paid 70% of the down payment and every mortgage installment. The house will be handled under the prenup. Until then, I'm choosing not to live here. He gripped the handle of one suitcase. If you leave tonight, we may never come back from this. I looked at him. I had a fever yesterday. You came home, looked at me, and said Sophie cried. We were already past the point of coming back. His hand slowly fell away. As I crossed the living room, Margaret called me selfish. Sophie stood as if she wanted to help with my luggage. I stepped around her. You said you felt like a guest in someone else's home, I told her. You won't have to feel that way anymore. Then I left. My apartment was 10 minutes from the office and had been mine since before the marriage. The previous tenant had moved out a month earlier. There was no art on the walls, very little food in the refrigerator, and only the most basic furniture. It should have felt temporary. Instead, when I closed the door behind me, the quiet felt solid. No one expected me to approve another woman's expenses. No one asked me to rescue a company while insulting my right to see its books. No one stood over me while I was sick and explained why someone else's tears mattered more. I ordered rice porridge, drank hot water, and slept for 9 uninterrupted hours. The next morning, the building called to say Ethan was downstairs. Tell her I need 5 minutes, he said through the intercom. You can speak now. This cannot be handled through lawyers. That is exactly how it will be handled. Northstar is something we built together. No. Northstar is your company. That distinction mattered whenever we discussed equity. It matters now too. You funded it. I lent it money. There are contracts. Do you have to make everything sound like a transaction? You only respect limits when they are written like transactions. He exhaled hard. Sophie agreed to move. That is between you and Sophie. I'll reimburse the card. Put it in the divorce agreement. I'm not here to discuss divorce. But I am. I ended the call and closed the blinds. Later that day, Daniel Reed, a partner at the venture fund leading Northstar's financing round, contacted me. We had met several times at industry dinners. He knew I was Ethan's wife. More importantly, he knew I had supplied early liquidity to Northstar. I need to verify the status of the related party loans, he said. Are you demanding repayment before closing? I am asking the company to follow the contracts. Will you renew the personal guarantee? No. Are you taking any additional action intended to interrupt operations? I will not interfere with management or spread private information. I will require accurate disclosure and stop risking my personal assets. He was quiet for a moment. Understood. One more question. Who is Sophie Lane? I looked away from the window. Why? Northstar hired her 3 months ago as an international brand consultant. She receives $30,000 a month, plus housing and transportation. We have not found regular attendance, client deliverables, market reports, or any completed work product. The room seemed to go still. I had thought Ethan was using my household credit to support her. He was also using Northstar. I was not aware of that contract, I said. What is her relationship to Ethan? She is his former girlfriend. Daniel did not react visibly, but his tone became more formal. Thank you. Our diligence team will proceed based on the records. After the call, I sat at my desk for several minutes without moving. Mia came in carrying a file and stopped when she saw my face. What happened? I told her. She lowered the folder slowly. Ethan asked me last month to reclassify some of Sophie's personal charges as international market development. I refused. He said Northstar's own finance team would handle it. You thought I knew? I assumed you had approved it. So did everyone. Mia's expression tightened. You always said Northstar was his dream. As long as the records were technically compliant, you did not interfere. He may have mistaken your restraint for ignorance. No, I said. He mistook it for permanent consent. The diligence process paused. 3 days later, Northstar's chief financial officer, Mark Patel, called me directly. He had joined the company in its first year and had repeatedly tried to formalize related party transactions. Ethan often dismissed those efforts by saying that money between spouses did not need excessive paperwork. Claire, I apologize for contacting you without going through Ethan, Mark said, but we have an urgent payment next week. Cloud infrastructure and 2 critical vendors total $1.2 million. Available operating cash is under $900,000. Ethan planned for you to bridge the gap until the financing closed. I will not. Mark did not argue. I understand. How long can payroll continue? 6 weeks. Taxes and benefits are current. The cloud contract is the immediate problem. If service is suspended, the core platform will be affected. That is a board and management issue. Yes. Preserve the original loan acknowledgments, board minutes, and payment approvals. Do not revise documents or backdate anything for anyone. He understood the warning. I will preserve everything. That evening, Ethan had a package delivered to my apartment. Inside was a 12-month cash flow forecast for Northstar and a handwritten note. One more bridge loan of $1.5 million. When the round closes, I will repay everything with interest. I will end Sophie's contract. We should not destroy 3 years of marriage because of an outsider. I scanned the note and sent it to Olivia. Then I wrote on the back, corporate financing is not a marital obligation. Please communicate through counsel. I returned the package unopened except for the documents. The following morning, Margaret called 17 times. I returned the call after my first meeting. She began crying immediately. What did you do? Ethan did not sleep all night. The board is questioning him. Sophie says she will leave. You have torn apart a perfectly good family. Are you satisfied? A family cannot be one person's responsibility. You are wealthy. Help him through this quarter. When Northstar goes public, you will benefit too. His shares are his separate property. You're married. What belongs to him belongs to you. Then why was my money always his, while his equity remained his? She stopped. Then her voice softened. Claire, I know you are hurt. I'll speak to Sophie. I'll make sure Ethan keeps his distance. But renew the guarantee first. Get the company through closing. Couples fight. You don't burn down a marriage over one mistake. I had a fever the day I froze the card. Not one of you asked whether I was all right. The moment the money stopped, everyone called. Silence. You do not miss me, I said. You miss the fact that I paid. I ended the call and muted her number. For years, they had called dependence love because I was the one carrying it. The moment I put it down, they called it cruelty. A week later, Northstar's investors convened a special meeting. I was not a shareholder, so I had no voting right. Daniel invited me only for the first portion to confirm the loans, the guarantee, and whether I had ever promised continuing financial support. The conference room was lined with glass. Ethan sat at the far end of the table beside Mark, 2 early investors, and 3 representatives from Daniel's fund. He did not greet me. Daniel began with the loan balance. Ms. Morgan, do you confirm that Northstar owes you approximately $3.34 million, including documented operating advances? Yes. Have you agreed orally or in writing to extend those loans indefinitely? No. Have you agreed to renew the $4 million personal guarantee? No. One board member leaned forward. Are you planning to freeze operating accounts or seek immediate collection? If Northstar submits a credible repayment proposal, I will not seek to freeze operating accounts. I am willing to discuss installment repayment, collateral, or other lawful arrangements. I will not provide additional capital on the basis that I am married to the founder. Ethan finally spoke. She never demanded repayment before. This sudden change is the result of a private marital dispute. I turned toward him. Did Northstar's cash flow risk appear because I stopped lending money? Obviously. Then why did the financing materials state that Northstar had at least 12 months of independent operating runway? No one moved. Mark lowered his eyes. Daniel opened the diligence report. That question is central to today's meeting, he said. The company treated Ms. Morgan's bridge loans as indefinitely renewable capital without fully disclosing the liquidity risk if her guarantee or support ended. He turned a page. We also found that Sophie Lane's consulting agreement lacks verifiable deliverables. Housing, transportation, and several personal expenses were coded as international market costs. This raises concerns about undisclosed conflicts and misuse of company funds. She is not a related party, Ethan said. Whether she meets the legal definition will be reviewed by counsel, Daniel replied. But the founder paying a former romantic partner a high salary and luxury benefits without documented work is independently material. Ethan looked at me. I said nothing. This time, I did not need to explain how I felt. His own approvals explained everything. My factual statement ended after 40 minutes. I left before the board deliberated. 3 hours later, Olivia forwarded the proposed financing conditions. Northstar would hire an independent head of finance. Ethan's authority to approve payments above $50,000 would be suspended. Sophie's contract would be terminated and all previous payments reviewed. New funding would first stabilize overdue obligations and repay matured debt. Ethan would pledge part of his personal equity to secure bridge financing. The board would also open an internal review of expense approvals and financial disclosures. Ethan refused to accept the conditions that day, so the financing remained on hold. He caught me near the elevators as I was leaving Olivia's office. Are you happy now? I did not vote. If you renewed the guarantee, none of those conditions would exist. If you had disclosed the liquidity risk and stopped using corporate money for Sophie, none of them would exist either. Her contract was legitimate. Then produce the work. His mouth tightened. Every sentence from you sounds like a verdict. I am not judging you, I said. I am no longer absorbing the consequences for you. At home, I found a message request from Sophie. I want to speak to you privately. I accepted. Her message arrived immediately and filled the screen. She said she had decided to leave Ethan. She would resign from Northstar. She admitted she had depended on him too heavily, but insisted she had not requested every benefit. Ethan had repeatedly told her, Claire knows. Claire won't mind. At the end, she asked me not to pursue the $188,426 because she could never repay it. I typed one sentence. Ethan has already accepted responsibility for your expenses. Ask him to include them in the divorce agreement. Her reply came 20 minutes later. This is a problem between you and your husband. Why are you dragging me into it? I stared at the words and laughed once, without humor. You did not feel dragged into our marriage when you used my card and moved into the apartment. She did not respond. The next day, Ethan transferred $23,840 into my account. The memo read, reimbursement for Sophie purchase. It was the first money he had returned since the cards were frozen. Mia recorded it as partial repayment. I sent no thank you message. He was not giving me a gift. He was returning what should never have been taken. Margaret's assisted living community sent another notice. This time she did not call me. She went to Sophie's apartment. I heard what happened from Rosa, the housekeeper who had worked in our marital home. Margaret apparently assumed Sophie would allow her to stay for a few days. After all, Sophie often told Ethan she considered Margaret family. Sophie refused. She said the apartment had been rented so she could recover emotionally after her divorce. Living with an older woman would interrupt her healing. Margaret said she would stay only until Ethan solved the cash problem. Sophie asked, haven't you always said Claire has more money than she needs? Why not ask her to keep paying? It was the first time the two women had turned their entitlement on each other. Margaret called Sophie ungrateful. Sophie cried and said she had never promised to support the Cole family. Ethan arrived, took his mother back to the community, and promised to cover the bill. By then, he had less than $50,000 of freely available personal cash. To pay Margaret's quarterly fees, he canceled Sophie's driver and housekeeping. He also demanded refunds for unused cosmetic treatments and wellness packages. According to Ethan, that was when Sophie finally lost her temper. "You offered those things," she said. "I never forced you. You told me I suffered beside you when we were young and deserved a better life now. Northstar is in a temporary crisis. Everything will return after the financing closes. You always tell me to wait. I waited for you to succeed years ago, and then I married someone else. I came back, and now I'm waiting again. What do you expect me to do? At least stop making me look like the other woman in your marriage. You cannot give me a stable life, and you cannot end your marriage. I did not come back to struggle beside you all over again." Ethan repeated that conversation to me weeks later. At the time, however, all I knew was that Sophie moved out of the apartment shortly after the driver disappeared. Our first formal divorce conference took place in Olivia's office. Ethan had lost weight. His suit hung differently at the shoulders, and there were dark circles beneath his eyes. "Sophie is leaving New York," he said before we began. "Her consulting contract will be terminated. The problem is over. We do not have to divorce. She is leaving because you can no longer provide the lifestyle she expected. She is still leaving." Sophie was never the underlying problem. I opened the draft agreement. She was evidence. The marital home would be appraised. After the mortgage, I would receive compensation based on my actual contribution. My premarital apartment, investments, and trust income remained mine. Ethan's Northstar shares remained his. Northstar's debt to me would be repaid under a secured schedule. Ethan would assume Sophie's card charges and any penalties from contracts he had signed for her. The remaining marital assets would be handled under the prenup and New York law. Ethan barely looked at the document. "Do you feel nothing for me now?" I did. "What were the last 3 years then?" "Years in which I lived sincerely and trusted you sincerely. I made one mistake." "No. I placed the account and company records between us. You abused the household account authority. That was one choice. You came home while I was ill and confronted me because Sophie cried. That was another. You gave her a corporate contract with no work. Another. You treated my private assets as permanent company financing and presented the dependents as independent runway. Another. I met his eyes. Every time, you bet that I would not leave." His throat moved. "I admit I became used to you handling everything. Being used to something does not make it yours. I can change. Maybe you can." I closed the agreement. "But you will not practice becoming a better man at my expense." He did not sign. The first conference ended without resolution. Over the next 2 weeks, Northstar's pressure intensified. The cloud provider granted only a 15-day extension. Several vendors demanded advance payment. Daniel's fund remained willing to invest, but only if Ethan accepted the governance conditions and pledged his shares for the bridge facility. He delayed until 3 days before the infrastructure deadline. Then he signed. Northstar appointed an independent finance executive. Mark became chief operating officer. Large payments required 2 approvals. Sophie's contract was formally terminated. 2 months of consulting fees, part of the apartment cost, and vehicle expenses were reclassified as amounts recoverable from Ethan. To close the bridge financing, he pledged 18% of his shares and sold an investment apartment he had owned before our marriage. The company survived. But Ethan's position changed. His ownership was diluted. The board suspended him as chief executive for 6 months due to governance failures and appointed a professional manager to oversee operations. When the news became public inside our industry, people assumed I was celebrating. Even Mia asked, "Does any part of you feel satisfied?" I considered the question. No. Ethan's lost authority, diluted shares, and suspended title were not things I had taken. They were the price of the risks he had created. I had done only one thing. I stopped filling the hole. After the financing closed, Northstar repaid $800,000 immediately. The remaining debt would be paid over 18 months and secured partly by Ethan's pledged equity. Olivia believed I could push for faster repayment. If you increase the pressure, they may agree to a lump sum, she said. Is the current plan adequately secured? Yes. Then no. You are worried the company will fail? No. I only want what I am owed. I don't need to corner anyone. That was the difference between Ethan and me. He believed a beneficial outcome justified making decisions for other people. I did not want leaving him to turn me into him. A month later, Margaret moved out of the luxury community. Ethan found a more affordable facility with good medical care but fewer private amenities. On moving day, she sent me a voice message. Claire, I know I said terrible things. I did not realize how much of our life you were carrying. Ethan was wrong, but he has suffered. Can you give each other one more chance? I listened twice before calling her that evening. Margaret, Olivia reviewed the new residency contract. It is fair. Your pension and Ethan's monthly contribution will cover everything. She began to cry when she heard me call her Margaret instead of Mom. You really won't call me that anymore? After the divorce, it would not be appropriate. I always thought you had so much that paying more did not matter. I did not think about how tired you might be. You did think about it, I said. You decided your comfort mattered more. Her crying grew louder. I did not comfort her. An apology could be accepted without reopening the relationship that made it necessary. At our second divorce conference, Ethan finally arrived with his own attorney. He had two requests. He wanted to keep the marital home and pay me the appraised value of my contribution instead of selling it. He wanted Northstar's repayment schedule extended to 24 months to protect operating cash. Olivia ran the numbers. With additional collateral, interest, and default protections, the proposal was reasonable. I agreed. Ethan still did not pick up the pen. If I sign this, he said, we are truly over. Yes. You will never regret it? My greatest regret is how many times I noticed a boundary moving and told myself married people should not keep score. He looked down. After a long time, he signed his name. Then, as the attorneys organized the pages, he said, Do you know why Sophie came back? She was divorced, and her former husband lost most of his money. She contacted me before she returned. She said her greatest regret was leaving me when I had nothing. So you thought you had a chance to repair an old wound? Yes. His smile was bitter. I thought she came back because she still loved me. After I canceled the driver and apartment, she said she would not start over with a man who had lost control of his company. She moved to Los Angeles. She took everything I gave her. Are you telling me this to prove you were used too? No. He looked at the signed agreement. I finally understand that you never demanded I become successful. When Northstar was struggling, you stayed. The first time I felt successful, I turned around to reward someone who did not stay. You were not rewarding Sophie. What was I doing? You were rewarding an image of yourself. He looked up. You needed the woman who left you to return so you could prove that she had made a mistake. Her admiration confirmed that you had won. Whether that victory hurt me never entered the story you were telling yourself. His eyes reddened. I lost the person who actually walked beside me. I did not answer. Some realizations arrive too late to repair anything. They can become a lesson for the person who learned them. They cannot become a duty for the person who is harmed. The divorce was finalized on a clear spring morning. Outside the courthouse, Ethan stood at the bottom of the steps and asked if I wanted to have lunch. No. Northstar's payments will go through the lawyers? And the finance teams. Is money really the only thing left for us to discuss? There used to be more. I looked at him. But you spent it. He did not follow me. Mia was waiting at the curb with coffee. Done? She asked. Done. Do you want to cry? I shook my head. I want lunch. She smiled. Your stomach is finally better? My doctor says eating on time helps. For years, my calendar had placed Ethan's funding meetings, Northstar's payment deadlines, and Margaret's appointments ahead of my own health. That week, for the first time, my follow-up appointment was at the top of the page. 3 months after the divorce, I completed the fund liquidation project that had consumed most of the previous year. My firm offered me leadership of a new risk and governance division and promoted me to partner. I did not accept immediately. I took 10 days off and went to a quiet coastal town in Maine. I slept until I woke naturally. I walked along the shore in the afternoons. I ate when I was hungry instead of when my schedule allowed. There was no dramatic romance waiting for me and no miraculous new life. There was simply space. Every meal was my choice. Every dollar was spent where I approved. Every evening ended without wondering whether my husband would come home or whether another woman would call me ungracious for objecting to the bill. When I returned to New York, I accepted the partnership. Northstar slowly stabilized under professional management. Its new product launched successfully. Cash flow turned positive. The board restored some of Ethan's business authority, but never again gave him unilateral control over finance. The company made every scheduled payment. 18 months later, Mia sent me a final settlement statement. "Paid in full," she wrote. "You are officially clear." I looked at the number in my account. I expected triumph. Instead, I felt calm. The money returning only corrected the books. My freedom had begun much earlier, when I stopped waiting for Ethan to become the man I remembered. Several months later, I saw him at a corporate governance forum. He looked healthier than he had during the divorce. He wore a dark suit and spoke on stage about founder accountability, cash flow risk, and the danger of treating private relationships as invisible corporate infrastructure. It was, I thought, an expensive education. After the panel, he approached me. "How have you been?" "Good. I heard you made partner." "I did. Congratulations." "Thank you." For a moment, we were simply two professionals standing near a crowded reception. Then he said, "I keep thinking about the day you froze the card. If I had gone home to take care of you instead of going to Sophie, would the result have been different? Maybe it would have happened later." "Only later?" The problem did not begin that day. I held his gaze. That was only the first day I refused to keep paying the price for it. He looked away. Someone across the room called my name. Before I turned, Ethan asked, "Could we ever be friends?" "There is no need." I walked toward my colleagues without looking back. That evening, my monthly bank statement arrived. Mortgage, utilities, a bookstore, restaurants, travel, a new camera I had wanted for months. Every charge was one I had chosen. There were no unfamiliar medical spas, no luxury boutique on Madison Avenue, no apartment for Sophie Lane, and no one else deciding whether I had the right to object to the use of my own money. I approved the statement and set down my phone. Manhattan glowed beyond the windows. For a long time, I had believed taking my life back meant recovering accounts, property, and loans. It meant more than that. It meant recovering the time I had postponed, the dignity I had negotiated away, and the right to make choices without apologizing for them. People later said Ethan's family panicked because I had become cold and calculating. They were wrong. They did not lose a woman who cared too much about money. They lost the woman who had quietly paid for everything. I did not ruin Ethan. I did not destroy his company. I did not take revenge on his mother or his former girlfriend. I simply stopped financing the lives they believed I owed them. I froze the cards. And then I walked away.